everybody. It's John Lemazny. I'm here with Sean. Hey, Sean.
Hey, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm glad. This is the Customer and the Service, in which we talk about customer service, and especially integrating with technology and mostly our own experiences, Sean, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll talk about things that we've run into that we thought were good examples of customer service that you might want to try to emulate if you offer a service to people. So, how was your week, Sean?
Was pretty good. Not much going on in terms of service or any discoveries. I spent a lot of time with my new smartwatch, putting it through its paces. I'm hoping we can talk about that in a week or two.
Sweet.
I think there's going to be a lot of good information out of that. Agreed.
Well, I haven't been spending a lot of time, especially in restaurants and other typical services that I would frequent recently, because I put myself on a pretty strict budget recently because of a change in my job and just trying to budget things out properly. So anyway, I don't have a lot of stories this week of visiting coffee shops or restaurants because I'm not really doing that right now. But what I am doing instead is really focusing on my consulting business. And part of my effort to make people aware of what I do, which is graphic design and technology consulting, is to try to do a post every day about the way that I think business should be run, the way that I think, really an extension of this conversation that I have with Sean every week, of best practices in customer service, especially focusing on technology and graphic design in this blog. And that's at lemazny.com, recently relaunched for this purpose. And there's a Facebook page and Google page and stuff. So what I wanted to do for this episode was maybe talk about a couple of the posts I've had on there recently, because, like I said, they really are in keeping with the things that Sean and I talk about typically anyway. I'm just going to visit the post just so I have a little reminder. The most recent post, the post that I put out today, was on branding. And for instance, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So yeah, this is the post that I put up. It's got this design here that I made called "Brand is not a logo." I wanted to represent the idea that many people believe when we start talking about branding, that we're just talking about the iconic brand that's visually attached to your organization, your logo. You know, you think about any major brand, Target, or if you think about an individual, chances are, if they are enough of a celebrity, they have some sort of a visual brand that goes with them that's like text-based, a logo. But that's not where brand begins at all. Brand often goes much, much deeper than that, and has to do with things like the way that you interact with people and the sights and sounds and objects that you have in the space where you do your work. And those sorts of things. So in this post, I wanted to bring light to these 5 questions. What 5 words best represent your organization? If you ask yourself this question, you might come up with something like design, technology, open source, nutrition, and creativity, or fitness, or any of the other things that are attached to you and the kinds of things that you talk about. If you were a customer and if you were to ask a customer, somebody who used your services, what 5 words they would use to describe you, what you really want the answer to be is a repetition of your 5 words. If you don't have that, there could be a problem. You might either have to pursue what the customer already thinks of you if it's a good thing, or redefine your brand for your customers if they don't understand what it is that you're trying to get out there. In what ways do your sensory elements, sights, sounds, feelings, tastes, and smells of the place where you do your work reinforce what you do. When people would visit me in my office at Princeton or at Rider, there was a certain experience that they had that was related to that space. In other words, the color on the walls, the rug on the floor, the furniture in the room, the art on the walls, all had an impact on specifically the culture of your organization. But that culture has a lot to do with your brand. If your organization was a person, who would it be? I said Gandhi here for mine, which is kind of funny. But you might think about an actor like Tom Hanks or a performer like Justin Bieber. As funny as that sounds, as a way, you might think of those people as a way to define your brand, or as a way of understanding how those brands are different. If you can think about the difference between Gandhi and Justin Bieber, you should have some idea of what I'm trying to say here, right? And if working with your organization or using your service was a meal, what would the courses, flavors, and hosts be like? You know, if you can describe the kind of experience that you want your user to have, you have a better sense of what your brand is. And then you can start to think about a logo. Because long before that, you have to think about what it is that you're trying to be and how you are trying to achieve those things. What's your brand, Sean?
That's a tough one. I guess my brand would be technology, education, evangelism. How many words we want? 3, 5?
Well, 3 is great. 5, right. You know, it depends on where you are. You should really have like 15. There should be extended parts of your brand that you're thinking about, even though you're not actively trying to make people aware of them. It's the sort of thing that they find out, like, you know, I might find out that you're really into rugby, and I don't know that by default, but I wouldn't be surprised, because the rest of your brand sort of speaks to that, you know, or whatever. So even though it's not the first foremost thing that you put in front of somebody, you and I have already discussed cigars on this show, and although I do enjoy cigars and consider it an extended part of my brand, it's certainly not one of the first 3 things I want somebody to think about when they think about me.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if we're looking at 3, but the real interesting question is when you ask somebody else what their 3 words would be about you, and they have to not know about the exercise first, so that they can give you honest answers. Or it doesn't help very much if you've already had this discussion with somebody and said, these are the ideas that represent me. Do you think that these ideas represent me? Somebody will always say, oh yeah, of course.
Of course.
You're you know, genius is one of your keywords. Yeah, you're a genius.
Absolutely.
So it's a bit of a tricky thing. It's got that research issue to it. You know, whenever you're trying to find something out, you don't want to influence the people who you are trying to get the answers from. At any rate, if you think about your brand in those terms, then all of a sudden, if Sean Petrowski was to have a logo attached to him, that logo would be much easier to design and would be much more accurate and much more fruitful, because Sean already knows his brand and has discussed that brand with the designer and said, you know, I'm about technology, I'm about education, I'm about, all of a sudden, like, in my mind, I'm making choices about texture, about font, about color, about shape that start to represent education. You know, you wouldn't want to necessarily have something really rough or have that faux urban thing going on where something looks crumbling. Like, if we were just to have a discussion and say, what are your favorite kinds of logos? You might say, oh, I really like these distressed logos that have, like, you know, they look like they were run through a mill or whatever. But even though you like that logo, that doesn't necessarily mean that that logo is the kind of thing that you want to represent yourself with if you are a technologist, an educator, etc. So I just think it's an interesting question because I don't think that many organizations have their brand well defined. Usually it just happens over time, or it happens whenever they get around to contacting somebody to help them establish their brand. I have a friend right now who just started a business, and the only reason I knew that he started a business was because he opened up a Facebook page for it. And I looked at his Facebook page on which there was like, it wasn't a logo at all. It had just been like, something typed into Word and screenshotted. It sounds funny, but it's for somebody who's not a designer, they just want something up. So they had to put up a picture, and they decided instead of having to be a picture of their face or a picture of a flower or whatever, they wanted to have their logo. But they don't have a logo because they haven't thought about, blah, blah, blah. So the first thing I did to contact him was say, I'm a graphic designer, if you didn't know, and I really would love to help you with your logo. And the reason I say that is because you're just starting out. This is the first impression you're going to make. And right now you just have black text on a white background that's like not current.
Wow, it wasn't even word art?
No. It's really not funny. I felt really bad because it's like you're launching your venture, and you need to be able to make a distinction between yourself and CVS because your business is being done by CVS and a lot of other places. How are you going to make the impression that you are offering them something that they're not already getting at this other place? And the first thing people see is this logo that was just it was bad. So we're working on it, though.
You want to see my logo?
Yeah, I want to see your logo. Are you wearing your logo on your sweatshirt?
No. There's my logo.
Hot.
It's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it says the SeanPetrowski.net official seal of quality, for those of you that can't see it.
It looks a little bit like the Mozilla.
Yeah, the Mozilla, right? Yeah, I never thought about that, but a little bit like the Mozilla T-Rex. Yeah, a little bit.
Crazy.
Well, I think you've touched upon something that we've kind of addressed before in an indirect way, and that's, a lot of people go into business or advertise their business, and they don't have a brand at all. And I think that not understanding what your brand is or misrepresenting your brand, it does a disservice to your customers. You know what I mean? That your friend putting that Microsoft Word logo up lowers customer expectation for the type of service that he can provide. So his brand in his customer's eyes is very low, and therefore they might not be expecting, high quality service, or maybe the price that they're quoted. You know what I mean? You're creating all kinds of different perceptions. Yeah. And I think that organizations, before they even begin or open their doors, they don't have to have an perfectly defined brand, but they need to.
It'll change over time, probably. Sure. As you find out more about your brand, you'll go ahead and make different choices about your brand. It's like the FedEx logo. Instead of continuing to use the words Federal Express, they recognized that everybody said FedEx and made a really nice impression with this visual brand. But it was only a reflection of how people interpreted them that led them to have this more successful solution.
Right, and we see companies all the time coming out with new logos and new brand representation, new slogans. So, even the biggest of the most successful companies do it all the time. Microsoft and eBay are two that come to mind right now. They just rebranded their corporate logos in a very big way a few months ago. And I just saw today, in fact, that HTC is changing its slogan completely. They used to have like a phrase. Yeah, now it's one particular word. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think it was something like along the lines of, I am not finding, here we go, news. Let's see.
Obviously, not a very good brand.
Yeah, I feel like when I read the article, this morning that was discussing it, it was like, oh yeah, that's their brand. Here it is. Quietly brilliant was their tagline, and they are now getting away from that, and they are simply going to use. This is an article that tells something different. The article that I read this morning said that they were going to go from quietly brilliant to a single word. This article is saying that they are going to be using the tagline bold, authentic, and playful. So
Bold, authentic, and playful. I like it.
yeah, interesting. Bold, referring to how their marketing attack is planned going forward. Authentic, for the HTC's focus on innovation. And playful, referencing HTC's features in their devices that consumers love. So obviously there was some thought that was very obvious thought that was put into that branding. And when it's explained, it becomes pretty obvious to anybody that knows HTC and the products that they make.
Well, what I really love about those words is that that is their definition of their brand. That's their 3 keywords that I was asking you for, and they're using it as their slogan.
Right.
Like my slogan for Lemastny.com is let's do something great together. I never thought to simply say, whatever, open source technology design, or it's a good solution.
Yeah, it is. And, I guess in this day and age, of dwindling attention spans and confusing marketing campaigns, and by going this simply stated route, that's not really obvious to the untrained eye. You know what I mean? About what it is that they're trying to convey. It's clever. I think it is clever. And I didn't, initially as I was reading those to you, I didn't pick up on the fact that that those were their 3 brand words, but as you mentioned, it's become extremely obvious to me. So I think that's a bold step, a good step. So when people start to hear HTC now, they're going to think playful, bold, authentic, and so that's
if they do keep to their brand, which it sounds like they have a plan.
Yeah.
And the thing about that too is, like, if your brand is well defined, hopefully you've integrated things like your strategic plan and your budget and all those things, and see where your focus is going. But it also helps you to make decisions. In other words, if you know what your personal brand is, or I know what my personal brand is, not my organizational brand, but just who I am, who I want to be. And let's say I wanted it to be bold, playful, and what was the other one?
authentic.
Authentic. That's a beautiful personal brand. And if I want to do that, every day we're faced with 200 questions. What am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to do today? What am I going to accomplish? What am I doing to pursue my dreams? Whatever. And in situations where you're faced with 2 choices, and one choice has some pros and cons, and another choice has other pros and cons, whether you're an organization or a personal person, you can use brand to help you determine the direction you should go. In other words, if I'm bold, playful, authentic, then if I'm faced with a question like, what am I going to do today, I might choose more bold, more playful, more authentic things. Or what kind of projects am I going to work on? More bold, more playful, more authentic projects. So if something's not particularly bold, I can pretty safely move away from it, and as a decision or a path to go, and be keeping with brand, which is the whole point. Reinforcing in people's minds that you are, for example, bold, playful, authentic.
Pretty awesome, nonetheless. And HTC, as we know, needs to do something drastic to turn their business around. They're kind of banking on the new HTC One Android phone, which this new slogan is going to be launched alongside with. So we'll see if it has a positive effect on their business and their brand recognition.
I always liked HTC. I mean, I really enjoyed the devices I've had from them. They were Android devices, but they just don't have any. Somewhere in the short history of mobile computing, they were right up there with Samsung, maybe even surpassing Samsung, and then Samsung suddenly just like took off. Did you see the launch event for their Galaxy 4S?
I didn't. I haven't had a chance to watch the video. I've seen that there's been a lot of controversy, that it was offensive, that it was just one of the most bizarre things that's ever happened. So unfortunately I haven't had a chance to check it out, but I have seen the press on it that it was like a catastrophe.
In a way, it was a catastrophe. In another way, it's almost like they were trying to get attention for their bad taste. And people have been talking about this ever since the launch event. They got like 6 extra days of attention in the technology press because of this thing, because of this nightmare of a launch event. And you compare it with something like Apple's launch events. There was no, you want to talk about brand difference. The difference between Apple and Samsung was clearly defined in this thing. They could present exactly the same content, but they would have done it completely differently. And that speaks to brand too. In other words, you and I are both technology consultants, and there are 100 others in the square 10 miles in this area. The people who know technology are here. Why would somebody call me or you or somebody else to do that work versus another person? It has so much to do with brand. And brand in our work is often defined by sitting down with somebody and doing the actual work. And the resulting feeling that people get from you. Were you helpful? Were you kind? Were you generous? Were you fair? Were you... all those things are so important in our work. Were you able to say, I don't know, if you didn't know? Were you able to answer most of my questions with a reasonable response? Those things are all the important part of the work that we do, and people define themselves differently. If you really show that you don't care and you'd rather be doing something else, chances are you will be doing something else.
I got nothing.
You got nothing. All right. Well, there was this other story too that I wrote about, and that was about ethics. So I read this article in the Global Edmonton about the idea of advertising to children.
Always an interesting topic.
Yeah. So I've seen this happen with my own kids. I walk into the room, they're watching TV. Part of the reason I don't have TV here anymore, and just the Roku. My kids would be watching some PBS-based show, or like there's a kids PBS network called Sprout where they have advertising. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole bunch of these kinds of channels that parents put their kids in front of because the content is clean, and the content is reasonable for a certain age, and the content is protective. And the thing about that is it gives you a certain calm. You think that you're putting your kids in front of this television for this half an hour, and they're not, at the very least, if they're watching this channel, they're not seeing anything they shouldn't, or you're not ready for them to see, and they're not ready to process, and so on. The problem is the advertising comes on, and the advertising is for McDonald's, and the advertising is for Taco Bell, and the advertising is for music, and the advertising is for, the advertising is never for a library. The advertising is never for nutritional, like actual nutritional choices. The advertising is always the worst common denominator of products that are geared towards kids. I won't get too deep into my child philosophy and fatherhood issues, but we want our kids to be the best they can be. And part of that is being fit. And part of that is being able to make sensible choices about the things that they spend their money on, and being able to know how to find sources that are reasonable and scholarly, and not fall for the things that we had to fall for in order to find out that something was not legitimate. And with advertising, it's so difficult because advertising is so well designed, in the same way that food now, processed food, is so well designed to suck you in regardless of your logic, regardless of your, the sense that you make of something. You have to sort of catch yourself and say, that's not true. What that just said, that's not true at all. But kids don't have that skill yet. And in my opinion, it's akin to the same idea that we don't allow people to drink or smoke until a certain age, or drive until a certain age, because the mind of somebody who's younger than that age, and often older than that age, is not really ready to comprehend the responsibility associated with that activity. And advertising is really no different. We are often never taught media interpretation skills or information literacy or any of those things in regards to advertising. And so what defenses do we have? It wasn't until I took a couple of media classes where we talked about these issues and talked about how you can bend the truth in order to make it factual in an advertisement in order to sell your product, regardless of whether or not it's true or not. That was when I was in college. And it's a long time between now and my kids being in college. 4 and 8-year-old, they don't have those skills. And I do my best to teach them what I know about that process. And one of my favorite moments was sitting with Jack in the car, and we were driving by, and there was a billboard. And he looked at the billboard and he said, that looks like a really delicious, hamburger or whatever it was. And I said, yeah, is that something that you would like? He said, well, it's advertising, so it probably is not, it's not actually like that. It's probably not as tasty as they make it seem. And we had that conversation about food photography and all these like little tricks that people use in advertising in order to make you be enticed to something. And he's starting to get those skills, my older son. And but I'm not always going to be sitting there to explain an ad. And so, with this situation where they're supposed to be watching children's programming, these ads coming up, it's really hard, and you have to change the channel on that advertising, not because it's sexual, but because it's still damaging, to make somebody believe that eating something high in fat, high in calories, and quick energy to burn is going to be somehow good for you. It might be enjoyable. It's not always good for you. So anyway, I wrote some of the rules that I have come up with in my own work for ethics that allow me to do a job with somebody. And I won't go through all 5, but one I wanted to bring up was one time I was asked to do a design job for a political candidate where a flyer was being designed. And this was just when they were coming into the rules about making sure that you say paid for by the office of blah, 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 in order to represent that idea that's being proposed on the page properly, in order to give it context. In other words, if some oil drilling thing was paid for by a political campaign, it needs to say that the political campaign blah, blah, blah. The job that they gave me was to camouflage the statement. In other words, still have it there, but have it there in such a way that you couldn't tell the difference between the letter forms of the message, paid for by blah, 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 and the surrounding texture around it. It was devious. And I walked away from the job, and it was a good paying job. But I can't do that kind of work. I can't do work that's going to deceive people or to tell them something that's not true or not be clear about it. And it's rules like that that allow me to go to sleep at night and be good with my conscience as a designer.
Going back to the subject that you brought up about your kids, not to go that far back, but you reminded me that when I was around your probably your oldest son's age, David's how old?
Jack is 8.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, so around that age for me, HBO had done 2 specials geared for kids in the 8 to 11 range. And they were called Buy Me That, and then the sequel was called Buy Me That 2. And it was specifically to educate kids about the lies in advertising. Like, they showed about food photography. They talked about how, marketing lingo and how it makes you think one thing and it doesn't mean another. They talked, they actually even used real commercials. They would break it down. They would show products that, kids, moon shoes, kids were bouncing up, 20 feet in the air or whatever, and then they actually had somebody using moon shoes, jumping 3 feet in the air, so it wasn't just like product testing, but they actually went in to show you how advertising can be deceiving.
Yeah.
It was an amazing special. We're talking a long time ago. Might be worth seeing if it's available on YouTube or some other service, because that would really be a great educational lesson for kids, for your kids, for kids that age. Like I said, it was done really well, and it was done responsibly and done in a way that kids that age can understand.
Yeah.
So,
and there are quite a few. You know how like sometimes schools will bring in somebody in order to do sort of a presentation in a classroom. There are a lot of people who are doing that work, but they get the same sort of short shrift as any of those special presenters. They show up once a year, if that, and it's not given the same attention that so many other things are given in schools, like whatever, math. But it's an incredibly important skill in our society because, I know people in my family who are addicted to QVC. I'm getting a call. So anyway, those kinds of issues you want to make people aware of so that they know how to resolve that for themselves, because it is a skill and it's something that you have to learn over time or be educated about.
Have you ever had any other work scenarios where you were asked to do something unethical that maybe violated one of your 5 rules or other rules?
Absolutely. So another example is back when I was doing 365 sketches, the thing about it was meant to be a community project. People were calling me and trying to get me to do work because I was doing it for free. And if they had an idea about something, I would be happy to design it in order to showcase my skills and also to give them a design for whatever they wanted. And somebody who was trying to start a T-shirt company asked me if I would take certain phrases and sketch and design them, which was a lot of the work that I did. And so he came to me and I said, yeah, let's get together. And we sat down and he showed me some of the phrases that he wanted. And some of them were like sort of the nonsense that you see on Shirts and Spencer's where it's like, that's nice, hon, now go make me a sandwich. Or just things that were either sexually degrading or they were demeaning to women or they were,
I like my coffee like I like my women, ground up and in the freezer.
That I might actually consider doing, but
somebody already beat you to that.
but like, yeah, anything that was this whole set of phrases was all sort of pseudo racist and definitely sexist. And there was ones about rape that were like, end rape, say yes. It was like really tasteless.
Jeez.
Yeah. And you could totally see some idiot kid with that on his shirt.
Yeah.
He probably sold 1 million of them, but not with my design on it. So it's yeah, people will give you money and expect you to leave a bit of your soul behind, and I don't want to be like. I'd rather starve, quite honestly.
Well, I think you're in a position now where you kind of can be a little more selective about, who you give your talents out to. And I think that's one of the things that, as you build up a reputation, as you become an experienced professional, you're able to do that. 17-year-old John Lemazny in high school who's trying to make some little money on the side so he can buy his, 1986 Chevy Nova might not be so, picky and choosy about what, T-shirts he's designing. But,
well, I probably would have, honestly, at that time, I might have even had that mindset. I would have been the buyer of that shirt. But, not those in particular, I hope. But, like, I wore Metallica shirts, when I was in high school every day. Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, because I won't wear a logo now. But every day, I had some sort of band shirt on. And, like, there were some ridiculous images on those shirts.
Yeah.
And, I had the famous Metallica Metal Up Your Ass shirt, and it had a toilet and somebody's hand with a knife in it. Like, what does that even mean?
I don't even remember that one.
Oh, boy. And I remember my sister who would, like, she would say, "Why are you wearing that shirt?" And I was like, "Oh, I like Metallica." "Oh, I like Metallica," as though that explains why I was wearing a toilet with a fist with a knife. Like what? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know, the things you do when you're younger, it's...
Oh, man. I guess.
You definitely didn't have 5 ethical rules.
I did not have 5 ethical rules.
And I didn't either, so it's all right.
All right, well, that's all I got, Sean.
I actually was just reminded while we were talking that I had a new in-store pickup experience with a new company we haven't explored yet, and I wanted to share that.
Cool.
So I'm into this video game called Skylanders, and I've mentioned it once or twice before. For those of you who don't know, Skylanders are these figures that you put on a light-up magical portal that connects to your Xbox. And when you put those figures on the portal, then they go into the game, and you can play as those characters in the game. It's very childish, but the game is really awesome, and a couple of my friends are really into it, so it's fun. So anyway, a new figure was released this weekend that was pretty much the last one that I really have wanted to get. I'm not trying to collect them all or anything, but it was just one that was interesting, and just wanted to have it for my collection. So I found out it was a Toys R Us exclusive, that I could only get it on Toys R Us, and that it was going to be available for the first time on Sunday. So I went to the Toys R Us website, and I saw that it was in stock in the Lawrenceville store, and they had an in-store pickup option from the website. So I went through the process, was able to pay for the item ahead of time. I used my PayPal account, which is great because I had some money in there that I could use, so it didn't come out of my debit card or anything like that. The typical email experience: we've received your order, we'll send you another email when your order is ready, and then when you receive that email, please print it out and bring it to the store. So I did that, drove to Toys R Us, and I got to the customer service counter, and there's a big sign: returns, exchanges, in-store pickup, and then written in black marker underneath in-store pickup in this like literally, there's a giant sign hung from the ceiling with black marker written on it. Underneath in-store pickup, it said, in the back of the store by the baby section. I said, okay. So I take my email, I go walk all the way to the back of the store, and I see that there's this kiosk that they've manufactured. There's a counter with a nice wooden counter with some storage units below it, and a big sign that says customer pickup with a scanner. So what I was supposed to do was, if I had the email, there's a barcode on it, scan it, or if I had a cell phone, I could text my order number to a specific number, and then that was just as good as barcode scanning it. So I did that, and then it said, okay, you're checked in, we know that you're here, we're going to go and retrieve your item for you, so go ahead and finish whatever shopping that you have, and we'll let you know when the item's ready.
Wow.
So went walking around the store. There was an announcement over the PA system. Sean Petrosky, there's your order is ready in the back of the store. Went back there. There was a guy with my bag of my item. Showed him my order email. He gave me my item, and I was on my way.
Wow.
So that was the in-store pickup process at Toys R Us. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, it was seamless. There were no problems whatsoever, unlike our typical Best Buy in-store experiences that we have.
Well, comparatively, I mean, come on. It sounds like a dream compared to Best Buy.
I don't know. The thing that I'm kind of, the jury's still out for me is like, when the Best Buy in-store pickup works, or the Walmart Best Buy in-store pickup works, you show up at the customer service counter, your item is there, you show your email, and you're out the door.
Well, that should have been the case. That should have been the case at Best Buy. But they are probably at Toys R Us. I know that they keep a pretty light staff. It's like 10 people run that store.
True.
And so I think that they do a lot of cross training too. In other words, anybody can sit in electronics. Anybody can sit at the main desk. Anybody can work in the bike, whatever. I don't know that for sure. But it's like, if that's the case, then anybody should be able to go and jump and grab a package. Mm-hmm. And then that way they don't have to set aside a place for stock. I don't know. I think that the technology mediation in your Toys R Us thing I like that.
I agree. I thought that was great. No, you didn't have to... there's no human interaction. You can move at your own pace. Maybe there were some things I wanted to do in the store before I scanned the barcode. You know what I mean? I didn't have to wait online to check in, which I've almost always had to do at Best Buy, even just to get my in-store pickup item. So there were a lot of things about the procedure that I liked, but I was a little thrown off by okay, why don't you go shopping and then we'll call you when it's ready. That kind of threw me for a loop a little bit.
I would have preferred that when I was in Best Buy. I would have loved the opportunity to not have to stand there and wait in front of people to have this person remember that they're getting something for me and eventually make their way back. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. There's something about queuing that's nice. If you get a number, they've been doing that forever in like delis and stuff. You get a number, you're going to get service at some point. And even better when I'm allowed to use my time as I wish. As far as you were concerned, you could have continued to stand there, and you might have gotten more information about the status of your order. But they were going to have to go and do this thing anyway. Would you rather have to stand there, or would you rather go do as you wish?
Oh, no, I'd rather go do as I wish. But if I was in a rush for, let's say, I did in-store pickup because I wanted to save time. I wanted to get in and out quickly. You
wish you had been sitting there.
Yeah, I would have been sitting there. And then, it was a good 10 minutes or so before they called my name. So, at that point I could have gone in those 10 minutes of me getting into the store, and checking in, I could have already had the item and been out the door.
Was there a hold on it when you ordered it?
Yeah, was the advantage, and that's the reason I did it, because I was afraid that they were going to run out of stock, because it was a hard to find item, and it was going to be released for the first time on Sunday morning. So I wanted to guarantee that I would have one no matter what time I showed up. So that was definitely the hugest advantage of using that service.
All right. Well, yeah, I think that we agree that we would rather have it sitting there,
Hmm.
taken off the floor, taken out of stock, whatever it was, because you know I'm coming. I mean,
Right. What does it matter if I come at 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock?
not like you were going to sell that thing out on the floor, because if I find out that you sold it and I had to come over here to pick up nothing, I'm going to be upset.
Right, which has happened to me at Best Buy multiple times with in-store pickup.
Yeah, because they really mean in-store. That your object is still in the store. Yeah, I don't like that. But speaking of queuing, and we've talked about Wawa many, many times, have
Yes.
you ever found yourself in the situation of uh, sandwich artist regret?
Probably. I don't know what you mean by that, but go ahead and explain it, and I'll tell you if I have.
So Wawa's own brand of sandwich artist regret for me is when I put in an order at a kiosk, and then I can hear, because I have a number in front of me, that people are getting their earlier orders later. I'm getting my earlier order later than they're getting theirs, and I always find myself seeing the speed of the people, because I don't make a particularly difficult order. And if I hear like three numbers above mine getting served and I'm not, I immediately am like, I definitely put in my order before that person. Why are they getting their food before I'm getting mine? Like, why is this? It's an equity issue. And usually I find out that it's because this particular sandwich artist is the one who's making my stuff. So
Yeah, I've had that. I think we've even talked about it on one of our earliest episodes, where there was one particular sandwich worker at the Wawa on Quaker Bridge Road that every time was behind the counter. The entire sandwich operation was FUBAR'd.
yeah,
And so I've seen that too, though, at the Princeton Wawa, where at lunchtime,
Wawa is the one I'm talking about. Actually.
well, they have 3 people typically on during lunch.
Yeah.
And you see workers 2 and 3 churning out the sandwiches, and worker number 1, it takes their time. Yeah.
And yet you still get that messy ass sandwich. It's still fine.
So yeah, I've had that regret. I've experienced it. I've seen it happen. I mean, the only time it's okay in my book is when, if somebody orders the tiny sandwich.
Yeah.
Not even the shorty, but whatever they call that one. The one that's like half of a half.
Yeah.
Or somebody gets like soup.
The Wawa Bitey.
The bitey, is that what it's called?
The Bitey.
It's terrible. But yeah, so I've experienced that. Many of my friends have experienced it. It's terrible. I would love to see it addressed someday, but...
By the way, you brought up this mini sandwich at Wawa. Have you ever seen I actually purchased it back when I went to, where do they toast their subs?
Quiznos.
At Quiznos, they have like a mini sandwich where it's a half of a half of a half.
Yeah.
And I swear it's an inch long. It's the most ridiculous sandwich I've ever seen.
I know what you're talking about. It's not made on the normal bread. It's they call it like the toasty or something.
There's that thing too, but that's a new innovation. Back when I was getting this mini sandwich, it was like it didn't have different bread. They used the same bread, and you know how they cut on an angle all the time?
Yeah.
And they put it up against like a ruler, and they're like, so it's exactly 4 inches or whatever. This was like This was like at the most 2 inches. This sandwich. It's the most ridiculous thing. It's literally a bite of food.
It's terrible. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm on the website right now trying to find out the name of what it is that we're talking about. But it's ridiculous, and I don't get it. I mean, it's cheap.
It's cheap.
But
I
you're
mean,
getting
it's low in
nothing.
calories too, but it's like if that's the reason that you're that low in calories, I think I'd rather go have a salad, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we are not fans of Subway, at least they're giving you a foot long for $5. You know what I mean?
For me, it's hardly ever about money, but yeah, a lot of these, Wawa does most of their classic hoagies for $5, $4.99.
Yeah, and then you look at somebody like Primo's.
Primos.
Primo's has the half a Primo, which is about 3 inches, and then a Primo is a half,
Yeah.
and then they have the whole, which is 24 inches.
We haven't talked about Primos, man. I love their vegetarian options there.
Crystal's also a giant fan of the vegetarian options there. We go there very frequently. They keep very weird hours, though, at the Primo's in Ewing.
Yeah, that's the only one I've been to, actually.
But Primo's is great, and I've consumed a whole, the 24 inches, many times in my life, which is it's bad, but I do it anyway.
I remember when we went to Tasty Sub one time. You got the whole roll, and I was like, "You're gonna eat that? That's like 4 sandwiches."
We do it all the time. Crystal does it too at Tasty. We'll get the whole thing. That's only like a 12 or a 14-inch sub. It's really not that big of a deal. But when you're going to Primo's and you get the whole 24-inch, that's 2 feet, man.
That's ridiculous.
A little bit, and then you end up paying $25 for the sandwich.
Most of the time, I'll get a 6-inch sandwich, and mostly vegetarian. And like at Wawa, that's like 300 calories. So the best possible outcome you would have from a 24-foot sandwich is 3, 6, 9, 1,200 calories. At one time, that was a day's calories for me.
Yeah, well, the way I can guarantee you that mine are exponentially more than that. So.
Oh man. All right.
Until
Good
next
show.
week. Until next week.
Yeah, until next week. Thanks so much, Sean. I'll talk to you real soon.
All right, see you then.
Bye.